We're going to be talking about the Microsoft Xbox console. Now, of course, this did utilize and revolutionize a lot of ways we play video games today. Now, of course, a lot of older consoles like the Dreamcast did have an online service, but it wasn't quite common that they had many games that you could play online with people like we do now. It was games like Phantasy Star and all that, but speaking why I brought Dreamcast in this, however, is due to the fact that this was a rumor. Now, I don't consider this a fact that this was the Dreamcast 2. Now, of course, Microsoft did have something to do with the Windows SE, or I'm sorry, CE, with the Dreamcast, but other than that, I see that, I guess, some of the blueprints for the console did go into the controller, but that's just about roughly. Now, the console did have a wide vocabulary of many titles you can pronounce off the tip of your tongue. Many notable being the Mech Assault series and the, quite a few of them like the Dragoon, Orta, and, the Dead or Alive. A couple of their games got remade. Guilty Gear X got a home in there. Dead or Alive 3 got put on there as well. Series of games here. These are, of course, just fighter titles. But, this console offered a lot of interesting and utilized games, as well as Shamu 2, which, of course, got, underlooked, but still utilized on this console. The greatest selling game to date now, I'm not a fanboy of this game that I'm about to talk about, but you guys get the point, is that the most successfully sold game on this console was Halo 2, which sold 8 million copies, or 8 point something copies. That's quite of a speakable aspect for this console. Of course, there's a lot more consoles out there that probably sold more for the price range or past that price range nowadays, like the Modern Warfare series or whatever. I don't quite go too deep into the pool of knowledge, but that's generally my rough estimate of being the highest selling game. I did know for a fact, though, it was Halo 2 that sold a lot of units for this console. It made the Xbox Live very, very popular for its time and date. Of course, kicking it off for a lot of FPS gamers. Now, again, this console had a few things going for it. It had a built-in hard drive that didn't require any battery backup. It was all run off a power supply, so it was sort of handled like a CPU, like a computer. That was, of course, built off a BIOS that loaded it up, and had its own little OS, I guess you would want to call it that, a dashboard for it. It's obviously 100% different from the Xbox 360 we all know now, and it has a lot of interesting things to it as well. Notably so, this console did not have a wireless feature at all. You had to plug this in through Ethernet or through a wireless adapter later on. As well as if you wanted to plug in a DVD remote control for this Xbox, you had to, of course, buy a DVD adapter or a DVD plug unit into one of the controller ports. This console also had up to 4 players. Now, of course, you look at the blueprint again at the Dreamcast versus the Xbox, you see a lot of comparisons. A lot of comparisons to each of the consoles. But again, the Xbox is sort of like an apple and orange to hardware. It does have, again, very simple and very sufficient design for its case as well. It has that nice, sleek ridges on the side. It has a nice X on there as well. Signify it's an Xbox. That's hence the little joke, I guess, behind the design of the console. Now, looking into the console's controller, this is, of course, where you would probably point out straight up that this was a Dreamcast ripoff. Now, again, of course, there's many controllers out there that would be pointed out to be copied off each other or clones of each other. This, of course, is the S model Xbox controller, which, of course, to me, to this date, I could stand up and say this is the most disgusting designed controller ever made. The D-pad is bad, as well as, these are great. They're very, when you put your hands around this, the analog sticks are a little bit boosted up, so you kind of have a little bit more control over it. This is obviously, of course, you see the pressure point trigger buttons, but again, it's just most of it's obviously carbon copy of the Dreamcast controller. Almost down to the buttons too. Almost. You got these, which of course represent the bumpers nowadays, so the Xbox 360 controller, which you can see it right here. A comparison side by side, practically almost the same controller. They fixed the back and the start buttons by putting them right here, as well as making the dashboard button, or the X button, or the signified menu button right in the center here. Again, like I mentioned before, this one's a wireless controller, which of course there is a wired version of this as well as a wireless, but of course is more commonly used for the wireless controller for most of the console's life, the Xbox 360. I mean, again, you got the button that automatically detects the console. I mean, it's totally apples and oranges for the controller, exception of course some of the design being similar. This of course got an award for being the top rated controller of all time as well. People probably like listening to this and going, yeah, this guy's a freaking fanboy, holy crap. Not really, I'm just talking about the facts, that's all. Your opinion. Yeah, see that's where it goes from there. But other than that, comparison wise, almost the same controller, exception of course a couple modifications and innovations to each side of the controller. But other than that, it's a really solidly built controller. The analogs feel quite nice, nice little clicky. A couple downsides of course is the select in the back in the start button being here, which is really unpractical. I mean, who the hell's gonna do that? Like, that's almost inconvenient. I mean, you have to like practice your head off just to get that going. I mean, you have to, you gotta like, see what I mean? It's kind of like almost unpractical. I mean, if it was start and select right here or down there or something, somewhere in the freaking center, that'd been great. I mean, as well as these buttons being here for the programmable or sometimes optional buttons here, as well as somewhat of a nuisance. I mean, this controller could have been better, that's all I can tell you. Xbox 360 did have itself a good old chuckle when it comes to having a standard definition experience. It did have an S-video port, which means you can have a really sharp quality video as well. An improved quality as well as, your standard AV cords. So again, the console did have its head in the AV market sooner or later, as well as the plug for this is quite large. That plugs into the console. As you can see right here, it kind of looks like, I can't really make any funny jokes about what it looks like, but yeah, it just looks like something I just can't quite put my finger on it. It's a failed joke in its process, I know. But either way, the AV cord looks almost like the S-SCART for the PAL region. Almost. Out the power supply or the plug was actually more of the lines of us being not a brick or anything to do with a brick, which I think of course this move for many consoles was pretty intelligent. Obviously of course the GameCube wanted to be more sleeker and more sufficient, not having any of this power supply inside the console. They of course went out with that power brick. With the Xbox they did not, as well as the PlayStation 2, which was almost identically the same power usage plug. The power plug in this case. So you didn't have anything like the Xbox 360 had with that power brick from hell that can basically kill you if you threw it from outside of a 13-story window. Well, practically a penny could kill you from a 13. No, that's not true. It has to be higher than that, wouldn't it? But something heavy has to hit you in the head at some point. Closing out, this console had a great life for what it was. It was discontinued in 2006. Now, of course, this game had many great titles and many ports, like Half-Life 2 and whatnot. It had great games like Blanks 1 and 2, it had Beyond Good and Evil, it had so many good games going for it. Examples, of course, is just almost daunting. You had Morrowind and, just games that, you can name it in the comments down below which games you liked for the Xbox if you actually enjoyed it. But, other than that, thought this console was pretty fantastic. It does have a few setbacks. The controller is not one of my favorites in the world, but it's something that can survive and get by. So, other than that, the console really had no complaints on my behalf, and, well, that's about it, guys. Again, leave your feedback and comments down below. Take it easy, folks. Thank you guys so much for watching.